Welcome everyone again to our Next Practices weekly call on diversity, equity, and inclusion. We're really excited today to talk about how you can elevate your workplace experience with Citigroup's Allyship 365. So just love seeing everyone calling in from all over the country today. Our quote of the day is, empathy is not just something that happens to us. Empathy is an action we take. Brene Brown, one of our favorite speakers here at I4CP as well, and can't wait to hear more about this quote from our speaker joining us today. I do see it's raining in LA. I think audio is working, but please feel free to troubleshoot with Zeta behind the scenes. As we dive into today's call, really excited to just dive into how we discover the people practices that drive high performance. That is our focus, what we do here at I4CP, and the focus of these Next Practice weekly calls. And what we do when we are looking at high performance organizations is looking at our research to see how organizations excel in 4 key areas: revenue growth, market share, profitability, and customer satisfaction. And what we're really looking at is how high performing organizations, what they're doing that's different than low performance organizations. There's almost always a big difference, and we do that through regression analysis. So we're looking at what specific practices organizations are doing that drive that bottom line business impact. In addition to our research, we're really supported by the incredible community. All of our members here play a central role in what we do, from contributing to our research to driving the direction our research agenda takes, and providing support within our membership just to each other. So we are so fortunate to conduct these research studies that are drawing from a database of more than 20,000 organizations worldwide. As you can see here, we have a great mix of national, multinational, and global companies contributing to our research. So welcome to all of our incredible members who are on the call today with us. All of our members have access to our most popular research report of the year, our 2024 priorities and prediction reports. For those who aren't familiar with that, this is our opportunity to really get that C-suite perspective from our I4CP boards here, where we have executives representing heads of HR, talent and learning, talent acquisition, DE&I, total rewards, and people analytics. And the report is going to be available just to we have our member link and our non-member link here. And you are going to be able to download that and get that in-depth look at what's next for HR through the distinct perspective of our different boards here. So go ahead and download that report. And now we're going to share the opportunity to just participate in an upcoming research study that we have. If you have your phone handy, go ahead and scan this. You can take the survey after we get off this call today. It's just a 5-minute survey. We want to have those results in by tomorrow. And if you complete the survey, you'll have access to the early results here. And with that, I'm really excited to just jump into the call. Just so you all know, our upcoming Next Practice weekly calls. Next week, we have Lori Frazier joining us. She's the Chief People Officer, and then Jenny Lee, Senior Manager of Strategy Initiatives at PAX8. The following week, we'll be diving in with Diane Garrison from IBM, and then wrapping up the month, Todd Warner is going to be joining us from BHP Group. And with that, I'm really excited to introduce my co-hosts here on today's call, Eric Davis, who's our Creative Director and Senior Editor at I4CP, and Jackie Robinson, Chair of our CDO board here and the Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer at the Cleveland Clinic. Happy Black History Month, everyone. And Jackie, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Nina. Welcome, everyone. So good to see you all today. Just want to acknowledge that today is the beginning of Black History Month. My little 7-year-old nephew asked me why it's only 28 days, typically. And how do you answer something like that? And I don't know if my answer was the right answer, but I said it just reminds us that we need to continue to act with a sense of urgency. to move the needle as we continue this journey. So it might be only 28 days long or 29 every 4 years, but we need to continue this journey and act with a sense of urgency as we move forward. So if any of you all can think of a better answer for my nephew, please put it in the chat, because I'm not sure that completely satisfied him. So with that, I want to say that I am extremely delighted that we have our guest speaker today, Sam Santos. She is the Managing Director, Global Head of DE&I Strategy at Citi. I know all of you are familiar with Citi, but we're going to dig into a little bit about Sam's role at Citi. But before we start, Sam, I always want to give this audience an opportunity to, not just welcome you, but get to know you. So first, I'm going to say welcome, and then Sam, I want to ask you a little bit about why you chose that very compelling quote, and why you chose that song today. So Sam, a warm welcome to you. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Jackie. Thanks for having me, and hello, everyone. I'm really excited to be here with all of you.
Absolutely. So, Sam, I love Brene Brown. There's nothing about her words, her wisdom that I don't love, but obviously something attracted you to that particular quote on empathy. Talk to us about that.
Well, I think we're in very challenging times, and we have been for quite some time. And we've become experts at crisis management, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, that's to be determined. But what I do think is that that really resonated with me, because oftentimes, we are asked to be empathetic or take on empathy. And the thing is, we have to be intentional about it. And what that quote signifies is the intentionality of lending that empathetic ear, also embracing empathy, moving beyond empathy to compassion. And I think that's an important part of, building resilience, especially in these times.
Very compelling. And I love what you said about resilience. I think anybody who's in this work today has built not just resilience, but muscle for the future. So tell us a little bit about Sam, a little bit more on your background and your work at Citi.
Sure. So I've been in the HR space for about 25 years now. I started off as an HR business partner, worked across different industries from manufacturing to financial services, tech. And I joined Citi almost 2 years ago to lead diversity, equity, and inclusion strategy. I sit under the Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer and Head of Talent, which is Erica Irish Brown. I have a team of strategic advisors that are aligned to different dimensions of diversity. And, we like to think of DEI here at Citi as a journey. It certainly is. And I know that's cliche and you've all heard it, right? Like, this is a race without a finish line. It's a journey. It truly is, right? And part of that is we're thinking about this from this perspective of these 5 key pillars. Number 1, how are we promoting that diverse employer of choice brand? Number 2, what are we doing to manage and develop talent? 3, how are we fostering that inclusive culture? 4, driving accountability. And 5, engaging our clients. And what that means in a nutshell is thinking about this not only from the internal mechanisms that we put in place, but what our external footprint is as well, because we attach it to the employee life cycle, thinking about how we attract talent into the organization. But most of all, we all know that diversity of thought and perspective is important. You can bring the diversity in the door, but how do you make people stay? And getting people sticky to organizations is harder and harder as this competitive landscape changes, and people have options in a way that they haven't had before. And we're fighting an age of accessibility in terms of it's a digital world now. So things are way beyond what we would imagine when we think about leveling this playing field of work, especially as we move to more hybrid environments and different workspaces and places. It's really important to think about this holistic approach to attracting and retaining talent and finding ways to embed DEI into those practices.
No, thank you so much. And I want to ask, I know you've done a lot of work on this Allyship 360 initiative, and I want to talk about that in a little bit. And I want to get back to how are you focused on your hybrid workplace today? So stick a pin in that. I want to just pass this to Eric because I know we've got a quick poll question. So I want the audience to be kind of thinking about what Sam just mentioned to us. We're going to go back to some of it, but Eric, for now, I'm going to pass this to you.
All right. Thanks, Jackie, and hello, everyone. So this poll question is taken from our Resetting DE&I survey, and I thought it would be good for us to give it a little tie-in today to today's topic on allyship. So how prepared are the following groups in your organization to address resistance to its DE&I efforts? And we've got senior leaders, mid-level managers, frontline managers, the DEI function, and HR function. So while everyone's putting their answers in here, Sam, I was wondering if you could tell us what kind of impact do you think Citi's Allyship 360 initiative has had on the number of people throughout your organization who can comfortably discuss your DE&I efforts?
That's a good question. So can I take a step back a bit just to explain like how Allyship 365 came to pass? So, we have 252 inclusion network chapters across Citi. And we had a group of very committed inclusion network members come to us and say, we want to do some type of allyship day because we want to engage those who normally don't engage with the networks or don't know about different identities and dimensions, and we want to really bring people into the fold. And we said, great, let's run it and let's work together to make this happen. And then Allyship Day turned out to Allyship Month, and then it evolved into Allyship 365 because Erica challenged us to say, well, why wouldn't we make this a widespread initiative that we focus on all year? And that resonated and worked with us because, allyship takes on many forms. It's ongoing, it's iterative. I can be a real active ally to one group and maybe a passive ally to another. And for those people who are like, well, I don't necessarily consider myself diverse, I always question that because I feel like there's this aspect of that two-dimensional approach to diversity. There's the inherent traits that you're born with that people see for the most part. And there are some, characteristics that are unseen, and we need to be mindful of that. But then there are also those acquired traits, those experiences that we've gained along the way that make us uniquely who we are. So in that sense, everyone has that aspect of difference. And even if you don't understand what makes you diverse necessarily, anyone can identify with being the only, the other, not being part of that in-group. And for those who have been in the out group, what a way to bring people together and then to think about how we can elevate our allyship and activate our allyship. And so with that, we all came together and we launched this Allyship 365 initiative. And we have a special distro for it, and we keep amplifying it because we all know these things take time to scale, especially at a company this size. So I say that to say to your original question about, can everyone talk about it? We're giving people the tools to talk about it, and we're keeping it alive by continuing to refer to Allyship 365 to really define what being an ally means, and also to think about ways to engage people in spaces that they normally wouldn't engage in. And so Allyship 365 is totally iterative for us because we started it last year. We launched it in April 2023. So coming up in April, this will be 1 year of Allyship 365, and we're thinking of ways to continue to evolve it and reinvent things, because I think the important thing to address is that you have to start off somewhere, right? A lot of this at times is experimental in nature until it really takes off. And, as part of this, you always need to strengthen your efforts. And so we're committed to this. We're committed to pushing Allyship 365, but we're not decoupling it from our diversity, equity, and inclusion strategy. And I think that's important to note too, because we're not saying, okay, because people don't necessarily want to talk about the D right now, we're just going to focus on the I, or, we're just going to focus on allyship. We're making this a whole ecosystem.
Excellent answer. Thank you. And the perspective there really melds into what we're doing to take this information and feed it back into what we'll be talking about for the rest of the hour. So as you can see from this poll question, and I can tell you this matches up exactly to what we're seeing in the rest of our survey responses. Most of the people who are not able to articulate the DE&I strategy exist in the mid-level manager and frontline manager areas of the organization. So just having an allyship program like this, where you bring people in, give them the tools and resources necessary to talk about what the DE&I initiatives are, what the business case is, why you're pursuing it as an organization, is critically important. So I hope that does help set the stage a little bit for what the rest of what Sam will be sharing with us. So with that, Jackie, I want to hand it back over to you. And thank you very much.
Oh, you're on mute, Jackie.
Sorry about that. Eric, I think the timing for that poll was spot on. And the one thing, Sam, that makes me think about, and I know you're going to clear the slide for us, but the one thing that makes me think about, you look at any DE&I function, we are very articulate about our function, but we cannot be the only voice out there and the only influencers. And so when you look at the responses from that poll, from this audience, it really shows you the opportunity we have to make sure that managers, frontline managers, senior leaders are not just on board with this, but they are influencing and engaging others. And one of the reasons why I am particularly interested and really excited about what you've done for this Allyship 365 program is because I think it's going to have a huge impact on retaining talent, not just diverse talent, but all talent. As you said earlier, talent has a choice. That was one of the pillars. So please help us to dig into this a little bit. Tell us what you want this audience to know about the Allyship 365 program that you're leading at Citi.
Okay, well, as you'll see, the slide is up here. So really, first part is we think about allyship as a journey. It's a spectrum, right? And we wanted people to understand that you can move from passive to active allyship at any time, right? And allyship is not one and done. And in order to do that, we wanted to make sure that our colleagues were prepared to be those allies when necessary. So the first step was really breaking it down and defining what's an ally, right? And then how is that demonstrated as allyship? So I'll just read from the slide here. An ally is an individual who is actively choosing to be an upstander rather than a bystander, and caring for and contributing to people of underrepresented groups. That's how we defined it. And allyship is the practice of supporting and advocating for marginalized groups that vary from one's own identity or identities. But I would say that it's more important to switch the advocating for to the advocating with, because oftentimes we try to be that ally without considering, is this person wanting our allyship in the way that we think they are? So subscribing to that platinum rule of treat people the way they want to be treated instead of the golden rule of treating people how you want to be treated is really important. So as part of that advocacy, it's giving people the tools to also stand up for themselves, but have that support. So our key objectives as part of the program is really activating your allyship year round. This is not something that you do, once in a blue. Like, this is something that you should actively think about. And there are different ways to do that. Encourage participation in our DE&I activities, provide tools and resources to increase understanding of being an active ally, foster inclusive culture and sense of belonging, enhance your DEI acumen, cross-collaboration across our Citi inclusion network offerings and intersectional programming to increase your awareness. So the key here is we're telling people that you have a role as part of your allyship to educate yourself. And so we have a one-page guide that kind of walks people through how you would be that active ally, where you could find resources and where you can get informed about the different things that you are curious about. Now, I know there are some people who are not proponents of the assume positive intent type of philosophy, but I think in this current age, like, it is important to think about that, because there are a lot of unknowns. There is often a lack of understanding, but if a person is coming to the table to want to understand, at times we do have to give people grace. And I think that's an important part of having allyship on both sides. So as I said earlier, we're coming up on the 1-year anniversary, and what have we done thus far? So we have created we're creating the new manager ally guide, in addition to what we have as the firm-wide guide. So really, to your point about those middle managers and frontline managers who are struggling with this, oftentimes we'll hear, oh, my manager never even said a word to me when this came out, or this happened, or my skip level manager reached out to me and never heard from them, and this just didn't seem authentic to me. So we've taken it beyond the you don't have to be well informed. It is important to be well informed. I want to say that. I'm not dispelling that. But a simple being human and how are you is important. And that goes back to that Brene Brown quote about being intentional about showing empathy. It just starts with a simple, hey, how are you doing? And really meaning it, not the passive, hey, how are you? When we see each other in the hallway and we never stop, but it's just a greeting. Take it beyond just being a surface greeting. And we're going to have a campaign to increase membership in our Allyship 365 community. So think about ways for us to activate it. And so April is Celebrate Diversity Month, which is why we chose April to launch last year. And so in line with that, I'm always looking for a catchy campaign to attach something to. We're going to continue to celebrate Diversity Month in April with Allyship 365 and increasing engagement from that way. We're rolling out some new DEI training offerings. So to keep Allyship 365 alive, we have come up with the Allyship 365 Upstander series. With that, we're going to have a series of course offerings that allow our colleagues to just learn about different identities and things that are happening today. So recently, in December, we hosted an anti-Semitism workshop. Just yesterday, we had an Islamophobia workshop, and we're going to continue with the series and have different topics of interest throughout the year. We're also starting an Allyship in Action corner in our Excelling Through Equity newsletter. And so that's really showcasing people who are activating their allyship inside of our city doors and outside of our city doors, and what are they doing to create change in our world. And then the other thing, which is wishful thinking on my part, I want to be real, is launching this Allyship digital passport. So really, as part of that, like having a stamp of the things that you've done to be that ally every day at Citi. And so that's in the works, and I'm hoping we can launch it by April. Like I said, it is wishful thinking, but you have to have a wish list. And then we've also been noodling on this Citi Allyversary campaign. And so instead of having a badge, just like giving a hashtag to it and allowing people to hashtag their post or any blog that we have referencing how they're telling their stories is important. And I think the storytelling aspect of this, it's what's most compelling, because storytelling brings about that heart and mind connection, and it then allowing people to tell their stories then makes this world of difference a little bit smaller, because we start to find commonalities or ways to bridge gaps, because we're bringing people together in a way that they haven't been brought together before. So that's why we're thinking Allyship 365. We're making it live. And, with this, we're thinking about it for now from a 3 to 5 year strategy, and then we'll see how it evolves from there. But many people have been asking us, how do I show up? What do I do? What do I say? And so taking it beyond the crucial conversation, just small actions that you can take to activate your allyship. The other thing we did was after October 7th, we launched a community space guide to give people space to have those open dialogues respectfully, because that's important as well. But also because we can't be everywhere at once, really giving people the tools to be informed and to facilitate those discussions in a way that there can be a meeting of the minds and hearts, and people can express their empathy and be intentional about it.
This is fantastic, Sam. I'm watching the chat light up with questions and comments alike, and I'd be remiss if we didn't take some of those. And so I'm going to encourage all of you. I'm going to turn it over to you, Nina, in a second, but I'm going to encourage all of you who have put comments in the chat or questions in the chat. Please come off mute. We really want this to be a conversation. We want Sam to be able to hear your voices as well. So Nina, I'm going to turn it over to you to, just kind of review some of the wonderful comments that have come through and any of the questions.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Jackie. And if you want to come off of mute, just raise your hand and we'd love to have you be an active participant on this call. Sam, I don't think it's going to be surprising to hear that people want to get their hands on your allyship guide. And a lot of the questions are trying to get everything they can out of you on what might be in that guide right now. But
Well, you
I'd like
can
to
hit
just
me
start...
up and I can give you a demo, but I can't send it out. But definitely reach out to me.
Oh, that is so generous of you. I think I want to start with a question. What does allyship mean to you? What does being an ally mean to you?
It's a good question. And I really think it's about being self-aware, really aware of my privilege and my access that might not be available to others, and how I exercise that. And so that's how I think about allyship. And I don't take it for granted, right? Like everyone seems to think that because I'm in this seat that, we are the experts and we know everything. We have subject matter expertise, but I always feel like I'm never really the expert because I don't have everyone's lived experience. So the power of connection is really important, and not leading with assumptions is even more important. And making those meaningful connections is a critical point or part of being that ally, because how can you bring about change if you don't take the time to understand?
Absolutely. And going just a little bit further down that train, Kelly Cantrell shared that her organization is really struggling with how to address assuming that positive intent. Could you share a little bit more about how you frame that at Citi?
We talk about it more from the perspective of us all having a role in educating ourselves, and not making assumptions about what someone intended to say. And if you feel comfortable, asking them. And, there's this tactic of paraphrasing at times. It's like, well, when you said this, I'm hearing this. Is that what you meant to say? Or could you explain further? I think having those open-ended questions, open dialogue helps to mitigate that positive intent issue. The other thing I love, there was this example in the Washington Post or this article like years ago when Obama was in office, and around his table, his leadership table, the women weren't being heard. So he started noticing that every time a woman spoke up, another woman would chime in and say, oh yes, what Jackie said, I wanted to reiterate that, or, I really appreciated what Nina said, or wait, Eric happens to be talking. So he got them together. And of course, I'm paraphrasing, I'll have to look for the reference, but this is what I remember. He got them together and was like, I want to understand what's happening here. And they were like, well, we weren't being seen, we weren't being heard, we were being talked over. And so the article highlighted this tactic of amplification and how important it is to help to amplify. And so in spreading the word or recognizing someone's lack of ability to be seen or be heard, there are different ways for you to be that upstander and not call someone out directly, because I think that's often the rub, right? People are fearful of like having to check and challenge. And so that's a way to check and challenge indirectly by supporting your colleague or whomever with amplification. So while you're not calling someone out directly on what their intent was, you're letting them know that you see bias happening and you're going to be that bias interrupter.
Mm-hmm. I love that. I know I really appreciated when other people have amplified for me before. And I love hearing how you can use that in the other direction as well. Another question kind of going down the same train. It sounds like you're doing a great work around just helping people have greater self-awareness and being able to just communicate really effectively and from an emotionally intelligent space with people. But there is a question I think a lot of people face, like how do you know when to step up? And how do you know when to just be a bystander? Do you do any training around that? Do you give any framework for people on knowing when to jump in?
So this is something that we've been actually thinking about ourselves, because we have the unconscious bias training, which everyone starts off with, right? And so then it's like, well, what do we graduate to? So we have some businesses who have started this journey of Allyship 101. We have a number of articles and partners that we've been working with to introduce some of these things. But what we're trying to do is get people to think about it from the perspective of sometimes, even if you don't call it out in the room, could you go to that person that you feel might be the affected party and ask them, how did they feel? Or ask them, what do they need? Or ask them, how do you support them in the future? So oftentimes people tend to think there has to be some type of challenge in the room. If you're not comfortable doing it in the room, then isn't there an opportunity for you to check in on the person outside of the room? It's never too late to do that, to say, I noticed this, call it out, ask them about it, and then perhaps be that support system to think about how you, just navigate that going forward.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love that introduction of that third option. This is a question from Ellie Fortis, and I think a question, that a lot of the DE&I leaders here on this call would love an answer to. You're obviously so passionate about this work, but this has been a tough year for DE&I. And when you're met with resistance, how do you handle it in a way that doesn't impact you emotionally or personally? You are showing up with so much joy on this call, so much energy. And Ellie's looking for some support on how she can support her team with this. So if you've got any tips for everyone on this call, we'd love to hear them.
Allie, I'm tired too, but I will say that. But you know what keeps me going is, number one, I don't take things personally, right? I think that's important because it's not about me. And oftentimes, because we're so personally invested in this work, it does feel like a personal attack, but it's not, right? And so once I'm able to separate myself from that helps a lot. The other thing is that I had to reframe this work for myself. And if any members of my team are on the call, they're going to be rolling their eyes are going to be up in their head somewhere, because I always talk about this from the stance of, we are advocates, we're not activists. And I think that's really important, depending on the spaces that you work in, to define that for yourself. Where are you in that dichotomy? Where do you sit? Where do you want to be? But in reality, where are you really? For me, I place myself firmly in the advocate, sort of half of the coin. And I keep that and I say that, and people are like, well, what's the difference, Sam? Like, I don't understand. It's like, as an activist, I can be loud, I can be disruptive. I don't have to think about any policies, practices, constraints. I can go forth with my own ideology and push that forward. As an advocate, I have to think about meeting people where they're at. I have to think about, what are our company policies and practices? How do I constructively disrupt? And how do I bring people along so we get to a place where we're really seeing the change that we need to see? So for me personally, moving to that advocacy framework means that I can still do good work. I just have to do it in a different way. And that's helped a lot because we all know we're asked to do more. We're challenged a lot. We're asked to be bold in certain cases, or then not, or maybe take a step back, or maybe you're not being bold enough. Maybe you're being too bold. It's a balancing act, always. So moving to more of that advocacy mindset has really helped me in these times, and really acknowledging this with the team. We've started a practice on our whole team to really start our meetings with, how are you doing really? And that, I think, makes a difference, because oftentimes we don't even get the chance to pause. So give yourself, when you can, that time to pause, because it's so important, and do something that you care about or you like. Do something for you, and that's okay. But carve out that time. And if it means you just taking a walk around the building, or, moving desk, I have, people who are telling me that they just shift their perspective by, working from another place one day, when they can. Those are the things that you do. But for me personally, I had to really reframe this work for myself to say, I'm an advocate.
I hope everyone was writing that down, because that is just an excellent framework, I think, on how to manage during this difficult time. Ellie is sharing her thank yous. Jackie, I think that, and just wanted to let you know, Ellie said that's exactly what she needed to hear. So I know.
Virtual hug, Ellie.
Jackie, I know that we could keep going all day with the questions from the chat, but I want to make sure that that we get to a little bit more of the meat of the program here. Do you want to jump back into your questions, and we can come back to the chat later?
Absolutely. I think the meat of the program, honestly, is engaging with this audience. And, Sam, if you don't know it because you are not checking the chat, what you just said right now, that framework on, advocacy versus activists, was so practical, profound, and compelling, and wise. Thank you for that. I mean, the chat was lighting up. People are like, yep, that's exactly what I needed to hear. So you are on it. You are on it, Sam. If you haven't written your book yet, that should be part of the book that you write. I'm just saying.
I'll keep that in mind.
You keep that in mind. When I look at all the comments around assuming positive intent and how difficult that is.
Yeah.
I had a conversation, many conversations not long ago with people about, positive intent. And there are some who believe, oh, well, it's easy to assume positive intent. There are others that say, no, it really isn't. And I started digging down deeper into that. And I want to ask you about just a theory that that was posed after some of these conversations. And someone said, microaggressions, think of it as, little discrete pinpricks that add up and become heavy. And it's like you carry them in a backpack, and you get to the point where it's like, I can't take anymore. My backpack is so heavy, I am about to fall over in the opposite direction. And I think that's the piece that people miss. It's not sometimes one microaggression in isolation. Sometimes it's multiple. And then you get to the point where, as you talked about so eloquently earlier, where you say enough is enough. You push back in a manner that is assertive, and then people are labeled as aggressive, right?
Yeah.
Talk to us about that positive intent, managing those microaggressions, and talk to us about how do you build that? How do you build that resilience? I mean, I loved your advocacy framework, but I think the audience needs to hear a little bit more about this because that positive intent thing is real.
Yeah. You know, positive and assuming positive intent is definitely not easy, right? So I don't want to come across like I think, oh, it's so easy to do so. It is hard. Microaggressions are those little paper cuts that get to you that compound over time. Yes. And it does become tiring, right? And so when I think about even going back to this point on allyship, and I think this ties into microaggressions, it's not up to us to educate others. You know, the onus is on the other party, then maybe the person who has, you know, who's the violator. I don't know what to call it. I think Kenji has a good descriptor, the source. I think he calls it the source, right? You know, the person who has done this, depending on your relationship with them, you can let them know that, hey, I was offended by what you stated, like if you have that level of comfort. The other thing is that there are times where there is just a lack of understanding. So you can say, I don't know if you realize when you said this, but this is how it impacted me. So you take it off of the person and saying you're wrong. You can just say, whether you recognize it or not, this had an impact on me because. Then the other thing is like being able to say sorry. We often stammer through the sorry, like, because you're like, oh, okay, well, I hope this person just lets this blow over, didn't realize I said this in this way, but it's okay to say sorry, and to mean it sincerely, but don't put it shouldn't be sorry, but it should be sorry and. You know, oftentimes we insert that but, and it just defeats the whole purpose of the story. Sorry.
And I think therein lies, I think therein lies the power of this allyship program. It goes to the foundation of what you're trying to build at Citi, which is around the culture. But at the same time, in building that culture, you are providing a very clear infrastructure to help people to evolve in that area of cultural competency. And allyship it seems like that is the tool that you're using to get there. I'm going to ask this question before I want to get into the Israel-Hamas war in a minute, but I want to make sure I ask for the audience, what kind of materials do you make available on the website and your allyship guide?
Well, we have a great learning team here that has created a degree pathway for a lot of different materials that are available. We also have a number of articles. We have a number of replays. So we're very intentional about any programming that we have. We know that people can't always show up at the time that we might be hosting something. And adding a replay link so that people can view it later, and also that it is there when possible, depending on what our agreements are. If there is an external speaker, to view that later, but then they can view it over and over again. And I think our inclusion networks play a really big role in this space as well. We have 9 globally, and the other thing is that we have this 4C model to any of our events or activities. For the inclusion networks, and their focus, it's the following, company from the perspective of how are we advancing what Citi does, and how Citi shows up, culture, and that really thinking about the customs and the traditions that make, or the cultural heritage that make whatever this identity is unique, community, because we want to ensure that people are giving back. And then, career, so that we can showcase those role models, because oftentimes, especially when you're in an underrepresented group, you're like, where are the people who look like me in these spaces and places? So we want to ensure that we're making sure that we have people who are represented in various aspects of, career life at Citi.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Sam. When I think about the Israel-Hamas war and just how divisive it is in the U.S. right now, how are you creating space for people to understand how to talk about anti-Semitism, Islamophobia. And I'm sure you've got an ally guide on that as well, but talk to us a little bit about how are you creating space for people to talk about it? I hear all the time, people are saying, wow, I really want to say something, but I don't know what to say. And I don't know how to say it. And furthermore, I don't know if I do say something, who I'm more likely to offend. So can you talk to us about, you know, what is Citi doing in that respect, and how do you create a space for everyone to be part of that conversation?
Yeah, I think we're being really intentional to say it's about the people, not the politics. That's number one. Number two, you know, I think I mentioned this earlier, but that community space guide came right on time to allow people to have these conversations and to think about how to have respectful dialogue, to talk about their differences, to talk about their shared experiences, to talk about, you know, also, you know, things that they are going through, and to gain some level of understanding across, you know, borders. So that's been really important. The other thing is we have teamed up with a number of our partners to do the Islamophobia training and the anti-Semitism training. And we've received positive feedback about that in terms of, oh, it's increased my level of understanding. The thing that we struggle with, and I want to be honest here, is that we can't satisfy everyone in terms of the content and the training, because we have to start foundationally. And so that is always something, because you have people who are of that lived experience who are like, well, we should have said this, or we should have been doing more. But it's like, this training is not for you specifically. This is for everyone. And we have to give everyone space to come to that foundational level of understanding in order for us to assume positive intent and have this dialogue, right? And so it's evolving in this space. We, you know, our Live Well team, which is like our wellness team and benefits, has been really focused on well-being and building resilience. And we've been partnering with them. And there's a lot of great work being done across Citi. And I think back to the point about amplification, we can never amplify enough, right? Because people just don't know what they don't know, right? They don't know where certain things are. So if we can create tools or leverage the things that we're posting, we're sending out memos about, and we continue to include these resources, I think that's an important part of keeping these things live and relevant, so that people are informed enough to be able to just say, hey, Nina, how are you doing? Jackie, just wanted to check in on you. And we also have like a check in on your colleagues resource too, that talks to you about like those keys to having the conversation without having the knowledge or the experience to really host the conversation. And I always tell people, just with these assumptions, they get a little dangerous. Like I had one person tell me from another organization that I worked at previously, it's like, you know, no one said anything to me, so people are just indifferent about it. I say, I don't think we could say that people are indifferent. I think people are afraid of being canceled, and they just don't know how to talk about it.
Right.
So,
That's right.
you know, Erica always loves to say silence is endorsement. So instead of being silent, here's a way for you to engage without offending or you think may offend someone, and just open up the door for conversation. And another thing is that we often continue to, you know, invite the same person for a coffee or tea, right? So expand that, right? Like think about somebody else that you can bring to your table or you could connect with, and find a way to bridge the gaps of understanding by opening up your, 15 minutes of time to talk to someone that you probably normally wouldn't engage with. And that's a great way, I think, to bridge difference.
I love everything you're saying, and the point you made about having tea with someone else, it's so compelling. And I think I4CP did some research to show that that is like one of the key leadership behaviors, if not the leadership behavior, getting to know someone else from a different background, a different culture that you wouldn't already know, right? So again, very, very compelling. I know that we're getting close on time, but I need to ask, how do you measure success in all of this? Do you tie this back to your annual or biannual surveys? Like, how do you measure success in this allyship program?
Well, one, it's new, so it's just starting. So it's like it's not like we have we haven't even reached the 10,000 person threshold yet, but we're aiming to get there. The thing is, it's like the number of people who contact us to say, I'd like to know more about this. And we track that. We track the open rates for the materials that we have. We track the number of people who engage. We also have started to make sure we have surveys when it's an Allyship 365 event, so we can get not only that qualitative feedback, but that quantitative feedback about the efficacy of whatever we've put out there. So I think there are different ways that you can measure it. And it's just seeing behavioral change, people wanting to engage with the content and wanting to share their allyship story is another way that we measure. So quantitatively, it's going to take time to think about what's the right metric, but we have a lot of qualitative data that we can draw from.
Sam, you have kept this so real, yet so practical, very profound and extremely compelling. You are just, wow, you are just like the consummate guest. Thank you so much. As we near our time, I want to make sure that Nina is able to cover any additional comments or questions from the chat before we turn it over to Eric and do our not I won't say final thank yous to you, Sam, but our thank yous for today. So Nina, any other questions from the chat?
I just want you to know, I hope you get a chance to look at this chat. You have a huge fan base here. People are blown away by the work. And again, it's incredible that this has happened in just 1 year. How does some of this internal work translate to the outside world? I think that's a great question for us to end on from the audience. And thank you, Susan Eddy, for sharing that question.
You know, I do think that right now we're focused internally, but we're trying to find ways to think about how we can share those allyship stories beyond Citi's doors. And the Allyship in Action sort of segment that we're planning for our newsletter is really going to focus on people who are doing things not only internally, but externally to further their allyship. And we're hoping that takes on a life of its own. So I will keep you all posted about how that's working out. But I think I said before, the power of storytelling is really compelling. And a lot of our work centers around just those just-in-time efforts. People usually attach to the diversity agenda when something has impacted them personally, right? And so we want to make it so that this they can find those linkages because of the stories that we put out there, because we often don't know what someone's going through. And there's that one thing that one person could say about their background or their experience really can bring people along in a way that you wouldn't imagine.
Thank you so much, Sam. And I think it goes without saying that this call in and of itself is making an impact. Thank you so much for sharing what you've done. Thank you to our audience today for really leaning in. I think that this is an incredible way for us to all get to kick off Black History Month together. Jackie, Eric, Sam, any last comments?
I just want to say thank you to I4CP for having me. Thank you, Jackie. Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Nina. Thank you, Zeta. Thank you, Pat. It's been amazing to be here with all of you. Just keep your resilience hats on. We're in this together. I'm happy to connect with anyone. So please reach out, because I'm always looking for ways to expand my network, because we're often going through the same things.
Oh, you are awesome. Sam, thank you again. I can't thank you enough. Audience absolutely loves you and adores you. Eric, I hate to turn it over to you after we've reached such a peak, but take us home with any final slides or information that this audience needs to know.
All right. So, and thank you from me too, Sam. This is an amazing session. Really appreciate it. So for those redeeming HRCI and SHRM credits, the codes for those are listed on this slide. Give everybody just a second to get those. Get a screen capture if needed. And those have also been posted in chat. Also, I would like people to know that our I4CP Next Practices Now conference, we're just, little less than 2 months away now from meeting in Scottsdale. This is a premier HR leadership event. There are no vendors and consultants at this conference. You can see a small lineup of some of the speakers that we're going to be having this year. I can tell you that most HR leaders who attend this conference say that it is definitely one of the best events that they attend every year. So if you haven't already, please sign up today. And again, the link to that has been posted in chat. And finally, I would just like to thank everyone for attending. Thank you for all your engagement in chat. Thank you one more time, Sam, for your fabulous work and sharing it with us. And we hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you.
See y'all
Thanks,
soon.
everyone. Thank you again, Sam.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Jackie. It was
Sam.
great talking to you.
As well, girl. See you soon. Take
Yes.
care, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye now.